Hello and welcome to Today in Education, TIE. We've got a number of things to look at today. The first article comes from U.S. News, titled California Becomes First State to Allow College Athletes to be Compensated. Student athletes at public and private colleges and universities. I said colleges. That was adorable. In California, will be allowed to market and profit from their name, image, and likeness beginning in 2023 after Governor Gavin Newsom on Monday signed the country's first pay-to-play law that is expected to have enormous implications on college sports and higher education writ large. This also comes from U.S. News, but Chicago teachers vote to strike over teacher pay. Chicago educators voted last Thursday to authorize a strike in the country's third largest school district, a decision supported by 94% of the Chicago Teachers Union members who are demanding higher pay, smaller class sizes, and more support staff. The third article we're looking at, and one of the longer ones, comes from The Big Think. How can the music industry inform the system of K-12 education? The history of the music industry parallels that of many industries and institutions in the U.S., many, that is, except for education. Insert dramatic music clip here. The history of the music industry has been one of bundling and unbundling. Originally, the only place you could hear your favorite song was on the radio if you were lucky, but then you could buy a single on a 45. Then individual songs became bundled again on LPs, then you could buy them unbundled through MP3s. This process of bundling and unbundling has taken place in many industries and institutions over time, and the result is greater choice, more personalization, and a better experience. But this hasn't really happened in education. Instead, education has been delivered in a one-size-fits-all bundle that's not really relevant for every student. So how can we fix this? Education today remains a producer-oriented institution. We take kids who are all phenomenally different in their interests, their aptitudes, their skills, and we press them into a uniform system that is not personalized toward them, but is more producer-focused and producer-oriented. And what's the result? Gallup did a study and found that 25% of fifth graders are disinterested in education. By the time students are in 12th grade, they found 2/3 of them are disinterested in education. And you can't really blame them because education is not being personalized to them, so it doesn't seem relevant to them. They don't see the connection. They don't see how it's valuable. What does this mean for me? How is it that we can bring about that transition in education, the same one that we see of bundling and unbundling in the music industry? That transition that we've seen across our society, where we are going to focus more on the kid who is standing in front of that teacher, sitting in front of that teacher, instead of the formula or the system that's being pressed down by the producer. This next article comes from EdScoop, titled Who Can Make Sense of the U.S.'s 738,000 Credentials? A recent study found there are more than 738,000 unique post-secondary and secondary credential opportunities in the United States. But this massive credential landscape proves difficult for employers and students to navigate without reliable data on programs' relevance or a standard way to map them onto various career paths. According to the report written by Credential Engine, a nonprofit group for raising awareness of credential programs, the recent count more than doubles its 2018 estimate of approximately 334,000 credentials. Yet not much is known about the value and impact of each of these credentials or whether their curriculums and learning outcomes meet the needs and goals of the general American workforce.
Have you thought about starting a podcast but you're not sure where to begin? I recommend using Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast, hands down. It's perfect for busy professionals like teachers because it gives you everything you need in one place. You have an app on your phone, or you have the website pulled up on your computer. They've got creation tools you can use to record and edit right there, and they'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. And you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership through either sponsorships like this one or through direct listener support. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
The final article we're going to look at today comes from The Atlantic. It's titled College Students Just Want Normal Libraries. Now, this is kind of it's not a long read, but it takes a lot to say a little, college libraries, along with public school libraries, have been reinventing themselves. They've been adding maker spaces, they've been adding new kinds of technology, 3D printers, all kinds of cool, fancy, high-tech resources for their students. But in general, studies show that students really just want a quiet place to study. They just want a place with some good books. Students would rather have physical books than e-readers at large. I'm one of those people too. I totally understand that sentiment. We talked a little bit about e-readers earlier this week on the show. I've gotten a couple of responses on what people's preferences are for e-readers of books. It seems like the general sentiment is people do prefer physical books, which I totally get. I'm in the same boat. And apparently most students are too. So we need to be careful. I mean, if you're reading this and you are someone working on a school library and you're thinking about reforming, maybe it's time to take a step back. Maybe it's time to bust out the old smelly books, those books that smell like, I don't even know how to describe the smell. Some old books just smell like nasty chemicals, like some old paperback novels, but then you get those hardcovers from like the 1800s or the 1930s or before. Look, here I am imitating the very people that I made fun of in the last episode. Well, kind of made fun of. Anyways, have a wonderful day. This has been Today in Education. This is the last time you will hear the show called that. From now on, I'm probably going to put it on a separate podcast, but we'll see how that goes. It might stay here. It'll be called, get this, Tot Off the Press. Isn't that hilarious? I thought that was a much better, more unique, and fun title than just Today in Education. So if you agree, leave a 5-star review. What else are you going to do? Want to support the show? Buy some merchandise on the website, which is also changing. So good luck with that. Have a wonderful day. Never stop learning.